community matters, community makes a difference. So thank you for showing up today. It's a big factor. These are the nice people here. They've all survived so much, so we look forward to it. We appreciate you guys' presence. And thank you guys, everybody, again. This is emotional, but man, it's like family. I know half of you, and it's like family. So, so good. Everybody's so supportive. So, with that being said, we're gonna ask some questions of you guys. So we're gonna have some interaction. We're gonna ask you guys if you would raise hands, but I'll hand this off to Natalie, and we're gonna ask you guys some questions about Natalie.
Hello, survivors.
Hello!
I'm not shy or afraid to say anything.
Awesome!
Before I ask some questions, I want to start off by reading a request by someone that is watching right now. Okay. She's watching from New York. My name is Liz Iannelli, and I am the founder of the IseeYouSurvivor campaign. I endured 993 days of mental, sexual, physical, spiritual, and emotional abuse at a troubled teen industry program. I am watching from New York, and I am blown away by the courage of the survivors coming forward. The troubled teen industry repeatedly commits acts of manslaughter to young people's childhoods and leave damaging, lasting effects into their adulthoods. No abuse will be tolerated now that we are being seen and heard. The troubled teen industry took things that did not belong to them. If you are in the local community in Stockton or Missouri, and you support Agape or any abusive program in your county, you are culpable for providing support to a systemic disillusion that robs children of their rights to safety.
Yes!
Do not let your compliance or silence be your consent. You have now been informed, and the abuse stops today.
Yeah!
As a survivor, traumatologist, and psychotherapist, I fully understand the negative and harmful effects of the aftermath of the troubled teen industry programs. I am hopeful that those who are listening take to heart the seriousness of this reality, sometimes described nothing short of a psychological thriller horror movie come to life. Agape, you are on notice.
Whoa!
We know who you are. And we fully intend to strangle your resources so you never abuse children ever again.
Yeah!
This is from my heart. And after I say my bit, I'm going to ask some questions. The questions are in regards to the abuse you experienced. I'm not pressuring anyone to raise your hand. If you have the courage to raise your hand, and this is your moment for validation. I was locked up and tortured at age 17 in 2004 at Spring Creek Lodge Academy in Thompson Falls, Montana. You think this place is in the middle of nowhere? You should see Thompson Falls. I was forced to be there against my will for 5 months, and that's all it took to cause complex post-traumatic stress response for the rest of my life after. In January 2019, I randomly decided to search for online forums for survivors of institutionalized child abuse. What I found brought back a flood of repressed memories I disassociated from for all of these years, when I am now 34. I learned that the monsters who own Spring Creek Lodge Academy, Chapin and Cameron Pullen and Mickey Manning, I learned that these monsters have multiple lawsuits filed against them by survivors of their abuses on every level of abuse, and that their so-called academy was not even accredited for. And so my high school diploma that I got from there doesn't even exist. It's fake. And they were forced to shut down shortly after I left the facility because a little girl hung and killed herself. They simply abandoned that facility to move down the road and reopen another, and is still out there torturing children to this day. During the 5 months I was there, they milked my dad of approximately $20,000 that was supposed to go towards my college education. My dad to this day blames me and holds it against me and tells me that I deserved it and what I got because he was convinced that it saved my life. He's only slightly come out of this disillusion and denial because of This Is Paris documentary. That's right. It took a celebrity that he doesn't even know to realize that I was abused and did not get the therapy that I needed or the education. I needed and wanted help. I was running away from home and partying at that age to escape the pain and abuse between my parents and from my parents towards me. I remember a moment in Spring Creek Lodge when I bravely stood up in front of all my peers to speak my truth about the abuses I had experienced in early childhood in front of this so-called staff therapist. And she interrupted me mid-story and told me to stop talking, that I'm going to need to talk to a therapist about all this because she didn't want to hear it. What the actual hell was going on here if I wasn't in therapy?
Right?
It taught me to internalize my problems. I didn't find the help I needed until 2 years ago because of other survivors and finally finding mentors who get it and believe me. I learned that most people are, in general, emotionally and psychologically unequipped to give me the guidance that I needed. I finally received the validation I needed because of you. And it has made all the difference in the world. With that being said, I would like to now take a moment to validate our experiences by asking some questions. Raise your hand if you feel called to.
Yes, ma'am.
The adults and environment you lived in as a child prior to the program was neglectful or abusive, and your response to the toxic environment got you labeled as a bad kid. You internalized those hurtful labels and still struggle to this day with a healthy sense of self-worth. You were told by adults in the program that you don't deserve to live, or you will end up with an early death, or you should kill yourself. You were told by adults in the program that you deserved it or asked for it if you were sexually assaulted. You were sexually assaulted by adults in the program or knew of others being sexually assaulted. To the young girls who were of pubescent age in the program, did you experience such immense stress that it physiologically took such a toll on your body that it shut down your menstrual cycle and you stopped menstruating completely in the program? You were forced to do a pap smear against your will. I did, and every girl in my lockdown cabin did too. And the so-called man gynecologist that I was forced to open my legs to was a chiropractor. You were forced by staff to attack your peers verbally or physically. You were stripped of all of your rights, including speaking your truth on the reality of your experiences in the program to your parents in letters or by telephone. If you tried, staff would lie to your parents and tell them that you were manipulating them. Ironic. You believe the offenses done to you by these people, profiting from false advertisement and abuse, are deserving of having their fortunes stripped from them and punished to the fullest extent, including prison.
Yes.
You want reparations for every dollar spent on your abuse. What these so-called adults put us through was torture. These monsters are addicted to abusing power, and they made fortunes on lies and abuse.
You tell them.
These pathetic excuses for leaders have no right to do what they are doing. They may have been able to break our minds and bodies temporarily, but they will never break the strength of our spirits.
Yes. Whoa.
Our time has come, finally, to expose the reality of this multi-billion-dollar industry of child abuse, no matter how hard they try to gaslight our truth. ICU survivors, your existences are real, your experiences are real, and you are valid. Your courage is beyond comprehension. I love you unconditionally. Thank you for seeing me. Keep your spirit alive, and let us be the adults we needed in childhood.
Yes. Whoa. Whoa.
It's crazy, for all these questions that before at a similar event, a little different questions, but every piece has amazed me, and it's not my time to speak, but I'm going to give a second before I'm going to call Jen after in a second, but we were all just talking about this. This is the point I want to make, and I just watched everybody raise their hands here. Why are we still having this conversation? Right?
Yeah.
Well, one, there's dogs when we have this conversation. Dogs will be protected, and this is years for a lot of us that we've suffered with the effects. But yet we still have people, some here today, that have recently got out of programs. This is still going on. Why are we still talking about this? So anyway, it sucks. But thank you guys again for everybody raising their hands there. It's just amazing, and it sucks. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that our community has not been better to each and every one of you guys, wherever you're from and whatever program you went to. So with that, thank you, Natalie, for your questions and your speeches. And we're gonna have Jenna come up now.
Whoa.
First, I wanted to say thank you to everybody for being here. There was a few times that, I tried to tell people about the abuse that I experienced, and they asked me for specifics and details, and I didn't know what to say because I didn't even know where to start, and I could talk for a really long time, and I wouldn't even be able to cover every detail or the extent of everything that I witnessed and experienced there. I do want to, before I go into my personal experiences, I do want to say real quick where I'm coming from with my position on what I believe, what I would like to see happen, and that's that I would like to see these places not exist anymore, because these people take kids for mental health issues, and that they're not qualified to do that, and that's tantamount to impersonating a doctor. And they take kids for extreme criminal issues sometimes, not all of this, so some portion of the student body, sometimes it's for some serious criminal issues, and if that's the case, then maybe that person should be given their due process rights in court. And they're the kids in these programs have fewer rights than people who are in jail and psychiatric wards. And so what I mean by that is, for example, I have the modern contract here with me from Agape boarding school, and one of the things that they have in it is something called a hold harmless agreement. And there's a clause that says that it essentially says that they refuse to take any responsibility for anything that could happen to your child there, including death. And so that's why I say the kids in these programs have fewer rights than someone in jail or a psychiatric ward, because I'm aware that there are abuses that occur in those places as well. But there are certain rights and protections. There are certain things that they are not supposed to do, and if they do those things, they are legally liable for them. So the fact that these people have a clause that plainly states that they're refused to take any responsibility for anything that happens to these kids is sick and wrong. So I want to tell you first about the worst thing that happened to me while I was at Agape boarding school, and that was being restrained. And so you heard someone else mention people are trying to hurt themselves, and the staff members responded to that by restraining them. It's important to understand that restraint is actually a euphemism for physical abuse. It's not a restraint.
Yep.
It's to hold you down and hurt you on purpose. And
Yes.
pressure points and rub your ankles together and rub your face into concrete and smash your face into things and hit you in the back of the head with an elbow. So what happened to me personally is I want to go into detail. I tried to hurt myself, and so I was restrained by a staff member. I was 115 pounds and I was a 14-year-old child. And I was not a threat to others. I was a threat to myself at the moment, but these people were not the people who were qualified to care for people who were in that state.
Yes.
And that's part of why this horrible thing that I'm about to describe happened to me. I was very small, and this 300-pound, 6 foot tall staff member who is well into adulthood, or at least 25, got on top of my back and sat on top of my back, while I was on my stomach. And that's actually an improper way to restrain people officially, because you can actually cause someone to suffocate that way, especially with him being so much bigger than me. And so I didn't know what to expect. And now, if something like that, if I was ever in that position, that physical position ever again, the first thing I would do is turn my head to the side and lay it down, because I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I felt his hand touch the back of my head. On the back of my head, and I felt his fingers curl around the back of my head, and he kind of lifted up a little bit, and he smashed my face into the floor, and immediately my nose broke, and there was a pool of blood and snot everywhere. My lip was busted from my braces. My braces were messed up after that. I needed orthodontal care, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. The medical neglect. I think that my braces are what kept me from losing teeth or breaking adult teeth. But anyway, so my face was smashed into the floor, and I immediately, I was crying, there was blood, there was snot, and I was just begging him not to do it again, saying things like, please don't smash my face into the floor, I'm not resisting, please don't hurt me again. And he said, stop. And he said stop twice, and I kept begging him not to hurt me. And I was confused at what he was telling me to stop doing, because I was not resisting at all, and I had no chance of resisting. That would have been crazy. And so when I asked him, stop what? I'm not doing anything. He said, stop talking. And I think that he didn't want students that were in the hallway above to hear what was going on. And then I was holding my head up, and after that, because I wanted to hold my head out of the giant pool of snot and blood that had formed on the floor very quickly, and grab my head again, and he turned my head to the side, and he pushed my head down, and he forced me to lay my head in the pool of snot and blood. And by about this time, there were other staff members that were arriving and helping hold me down, because I needed help. And they picked me up and they carried me into the gym, and they put me on a wrestling mat, and they held me down. And then as they were holding me down, the same staff member that smashed my face on the floor, he rested his elbows on my calves, and he wasn't. I feel like they were taking it easy on me, which is shitty to say. But I do know that a lot of people have way worse experiences with being restrained, and I kind of have survivor's guilt about that. But anyway, the thing with the elbows, one of the things that they do is they'll push your elbows and your pressure points and move them around. And so that was kind of what he was doing to me on my calves. And one of the staff members was holding my arms to the ground so tightly that I was losing blood circulation in my fingers. And I was being completely calm, not resisting. I very calmly asked him to apply slightly less pressure, because I couldn't feel my fingers. so I stopped talking and gave up, and like they eventually left me up, and they eventually let me up. And I want to say like that was Andrew Lopez that smashed my face into the floor. And then after I was let up, the dean of students, Brent Jackson, he started screaming in my face so loud, his face was turning red, his veins were popping out of his neck. He told me that I don't love my mother and like some other things like that. I was so scared that I was having like physical fear responses that only happen like in extreme circumstances, like certain like parts of my body, like it was just like extreme fear responses. And like I was like taken, and like he was yelling at me in such a scary way, and like after what had happened, I mean, it was extremely intimidating to have him screaming in my face right after the physical violence. And then they took me out to the hallway, and they handed me a rag and some yellow spray, and they pointed at the blood and snot, and they said, clean it up. And at that point, I pretty much figured out that these people were really messed up, and that, and I thought to myself, this is really messed up that they're making me clean up my own blood and snot off the floor after they smashed my face into the floor. And but I didn't say anything because I knew at that point that these people were evil, and so I cleaned it up. And then I did say a few more things about how he smashed my face into the floor. I said that was unnecessary. And that he shouldn't have done that, and they were telling me that it was necessary, that I was restrained, I was a threat to myself, as if that also means that it was okay that they smashed my face into a floor, and that is absolutely not the correct thing to do in that situation.
It's wrong!
And I want to say that when I kept saying that about like my nose, and I burnt my nose, and I was wrong, Scott Dumar said to me, I had some self-injuries on my wrists, and he said, look at what you did to your arms, and you're complaining about what we did, and you're complaining about your nose. And it was, so he was pretty much in plain English stating that I don't have a right to complain about being physically abused because I had mental health issues, and that's just really messed up. And I've told some people before that was said to me, and I found that it seems like some people find those words to be so messed up that they can't even believe me. And I find that when I tell people more about these places, it seems like how much people believe me is inversely proportional to how much information I tell them. And somebody else said this to me a couple of minutes ago, and I've had this thought too independently, that it almost seems like some of the things that they do, like they make it so weird and bizarre to where like they know that it's unbelievable, even if that wasn't the plan, like they understand that some of the things that they're doing are so messed up that like people can't even believe me because like they haven't had similar experiences, I guess. Also, like with my braces being messed up, I remember when I was at home that if anything ever happened with my braces, like if a rubber band broke or if a wire was sticking out or if a wire was poking me in the ground or something, like I would tell my dad, and I would be at the orthodontist within the next 48 hours. So I had my braces messed up, and I told them that I needed to go to the orthodontist to have my braces fixed. And basically, they wouldn't take me to the orthodontist because I wasn't the right shirt color. And so I had to ring up.
And they're done that.
Egregious.
That they committed. My parents were like calling, because I told my parents on the phone that my braces were messed up, and I didn't I didn't tell them why, and like they kept calling and trying to make me appointments, and they kept telling my parents that I wasn't the right shirt color to the orthodontist. After this happened, I knew that they read our letters, and I knew that they monitored our phone calls. They claimed that while I was there, they would claim that they don't listen to phone calls, like we brought that up with staff, but that's actually false because I have the parent handbook right here, And in the parent handbook, it actually states that there's a rule that there's no whispering allowed on the phone, and only English is to be spoken on the phone. And I remember when I was there was a student from Chile that spoke Spanish with his parents, and they did let him speak Spanish with his parents under the circumstance that he would have the phone call taken in the presence of a Spanish-speaking staff member. So obviously they do listen to people's phone calls, and they're liars. So more about him being liars, I also have in this handbook, like the page where they talk about how they moved from Othello, and they say that they were like called by God to find like a more permanent place. It's laughable. And I've done a lot of digging. And I found a lot of old news articles in the old Othello news archive. And there are several articles that talk about how, like, the fire marshal went there, there was rotting food, kids were being locked inside the dorms from the outside, with space heaters on the inside, there were exposed wires, there was an issue with asbestos. I don't know if I mentioned the rotting food. So holding people incommunicado is a huge risk for abuse. And one more thing, I was about earlier that I was saying, like, I was talking about how, like, if somebody has a criminal or mental health issue, we already have systems in place that are, like, regulated and, like, accountable to civil authority, that these places are. And if whatever somebody is doing is not like bad enough to be adjudicated or placed on a psychiatric hold, then whatever they're doing is likely not bad enough for them to even be okay for them to be institutionalized at all. The modern psychiatric view on institutionalization is that it should only be used in emergencies, like when someone is a threat to themselves or others, and obviously they should be able to care of people who are qualified to deal with that. Some of the risks of institutionalization are like it's called psychiatric institutionalization, and it's basically like when you spend so much time in a place like this that your mind gets stuck there and you have a lot of difficulty with adjusting to the outside world when you leave. Another risk of institutionalization in any institution is abuse, and that's because just something that we know from like Stanford prison experiments and Milgram experiments, when somebody has a high degree of control over another person, they can have like an effect called that person to be like sadistic, and that's like with like most people. And so abuse is a big risk with any kind of institutionalization. When you're institutionalized, you're in a very vulnerable position, and that's why it should only be used for emergencies and be short-term only, because people need to develop skills that allow them to develop skills.
Yeah, let me go get my phone charger, but I do. I've got one. I have a phone charger in my car. Amanda, will you?
So there was a punishment called Browntown, and it was basically like boot camp, like they make you like work out and stuff, and go to school. And one thing that was really crazy about the Browntown punishment was that for lunch they would only feed kids peanut butter sandwiches, and like so they denied them access to a full nutritional meal as a punishment. They were giving the other kids a whole hot meal with multiple food groups. But said they would use your access to proper nutrition and access to like basic needs as a punishment, and to think that improper nutrition was combined with forced exercise is horrible. I remember when I was at Browntown, one time we were like running, they were working it out, but the way that they did the water break was they had us like run, like race each other up and down worth of work, and hypothetically, if they pay people $10 an hour to do that work, that would be $39,000 in labor cost. So in only those 5 days, they exploited the student body for $39,000 worth of labor costs. And that's not a one example. That's all they want examples. They also had something that we called the intake room when I was there. I think they changed the name of it to the timeout room. It's the same thing. And so when I was there, sometimes for like if you were refusing or just generally applying, then they would put you in the intake room for several days. And like, okay, so it's basically like isolation settle, except like one thing that was weird about it was like there was a staff member like down there with you. There was an 18-year-old down there with you. He was just supposedly like a neutral witness, but not really. And like, okay, so like
You mentioned Gabriel. He's so sweet.
like isolation because there's somebody down there with you. But one thing that's different about isolation is like when you're isolated by yourself in a cell, you can lay down, you can sleep, you can work out, you can do whatever you want really. But when you're down there with the staff member in the intake room, they and that's not to say that isolation is okay. I was just pointing out the difference between the way that they do it and like stuff. But so when I was in the intake room, like let's see, I think I like lay down on my back, and he told me like there's no laying down, like you can't go to or something like that. So like they want to keep you awake down there because it makes it like a sensory deprivation experience. And so when they put people down there for multiple days, they would wake people up at 5:30 in the morning, 30 minutes before everybody else, the rest of the student body woke up, and they would take them down there, and then some staff members when they would force kids to hold stress positions, like holding their fingers out to the wall, not leaning on the wall, just like standing there like this for hours. Which they didn't do, like once you get they put a mat on the floor, and it's not comfortable, and they you think it's not good, but it's like they make you sleep on the floor, and they only so you get to lay down at about 10 p.m. and then they wake you up at 5:30 in the morning, and so they only give you 7.5 hours of opportunity to sleep, and it's on the floor, so it seems like they're like purposefully trying to like make you like not be able to sleep in that circumstance, like to break you down. These people are expert child abusers. They've honed their methods over the years, and they know how to get away with it. It's really disappointing.
It's sickening.
Yeah, and my message to Agape is like some things that other people said is like we're adults and we're smart now. We're not going to be pushed around. We're going to keep speaking out.
Yep.
We know that they hate it when we speak out because of how like when we leave and they can sign papers about not being abused and like some people have their experience also. The staff members sign like non-disclosure agreements because they hate it when we speak out. That's why I love speaking out. And my message to parents is that we don't want to judge you for making this really difficult decision. We just want to give you like proper information that you need to make an informed decision to get your child help, and we don't want you to be taken advantage of. My message to parents is don't get scammed by the trouble team industry. It's a scam.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.
No, they had to go to the ranch.
The ladies just had to leave they're going to do a little personal
She said but they had to go.
They're going to visit their school.
So my name is Alan Knoll. For those that don't
Yeah.
know, I think I know most of you guys. I attended
Okay.
Boys Academy,
I'm
age
running
10
the house
to
and snatch
13,
someone from behind the
and
TV.
this program up the road called Agape boarding school, age 13 to 15. It's not what I would call a good program. I've heard everybody's stories today, and one thing I think that is common here is that there's not one story that I've heard that's unique. Everybody's telling the same thing. They have different experiences, but the story is the same. They're in these programs against their own will. They're away from their homes. They're away from their family. And instead of being taken care of, they're living in constant fear. I stay at Bethel. I wrote my books, Riding Bethel, and I talk about that. And I had pit bulls that sticked on me. I had essentially waterboard. They would pour buckets of water on me. And sorry, my notes. I left my notes. I have feet held down and have buckets of water poured on me. So anyway, Bethel was pretty crazy. Every day was literally living in fear. Just my entire childhood. And I want to talk about how that kind of affected me, but I'm sure it's similar to y'all. I grew up away from my family, as many of you did. My brothers were separated from me, so I didn't have that bond. I didn't know what it was like to open Christmas presents on Christmases, or get to have sleepovers with friends, go to movies, be a child. I was 10 years old. Instead, even though I was at these programs, I could have just been doing like a regular program if it was done right and had proper regulations. Instead, I'm living in fear and constantly questioning, so that my childhood was completely abandoned. And I'm sure everybody can relate to that, right? That when these programs stayed with you throughout.
Agape.
So since we're here in Stockton, I want to focus a little bit about Agape. So Agape boarding school is about 2 miles up the road.
It's just interesting to see.
I arrived here when I was 13 years old. They were still in a rebuilding stage after the fire, and I watched the place grow off our labor. I watched building after building be made off of our labor, and I watched them get wealthy. I watched them have nothing to have everything. I watched tuition be raised. I watched all of this. I was a real smart kid back then. Hopefully now. But I always saw. And one thing was at Agape is they would always preach to us and tell us how this was for our good. It certainly looked like everything was for their good.
Yep.
They talk about what's good for us, but it's certainly
It was sure good for them.
everything was good for them. These
Yep.
guys are wealthy. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling. I'm a little bit off my element here, and but I just kind of I'm supposed to be looking at my notes, as Dave would say, so I'm going to glance down at my notes. But that's my experience at Agape. I'm not going to get too much into the abuse aspect. You guys have summed that up. With Agape, I'm still coming to terms with Agape. I'll speak briefly because Amanda did.